here. Okay. Let's do it, YouTube. Let's go. Alright, here we go. Alright. I think it's working. There it is. Alright. Alright. Uh-oh. Why is the sidebar on my thing not working? Great. Why do I have to have multi-touch issues right now? Alright, whatever. Okay, so hello guys. Hi, how are you doing? Yes, we're gonna be finishing these add-ups today. I have 2 more to color out of the 6. Oh, sorry. And then I actually decide that if I color those and the stream didn't crash or anything like that, I'm going to go ahead and color them. Which is really, I'm not tired. Trust me, I am not tired. I just woke up 2 hours ago. So I'm not tired, I promise you. I'm more annoyed because my multi-touch issues are deciding to not. My iPad is 3 years old, just for context. And I've used it every single day since I got it. So it has run into some issues, and one of the big issues it's having is multi-touch issues with its screen. Where sometimes my clicks will not register, which is frustrating, but sometimes the edge of the screen will just not register my finger. It'll only register my pen. So like if you look in the corner over here, or on the side, on the left-hand side, this bar over here where you can do opacity and brush size, if I'm touching it with my finger, it's not registering. My finger just doesn't exist. But if I touch it with my stylus, it works for some reason. So I can't turn my iPad and turn it back on. That's usually what fixes the issue, but I can't do it while I'm streaming because that'll end the stream. So I'm just going to have to deal with it for this stream, which is fantastic. I guess maybe I can, let's see if I can go right-handed mode, actually. Will that work? Yes, okay, so I'll go right-handed mode for this. So I can at least adjust it, because I'm not used to doing it with my pencil, so it's going to totally F up my workflow. So, improvising. We're going to just do it on the right for now. Anyway, so if you weren't here for the last ones, just to show what we have so far, these are adoptables for December that I need to get done, so I can post them. Wait, I'm not ambidextrous. I draw with my right hand, but I like having, technically this over here is supposed to be right-handed mode, but I draw with my right-handed. I draw with my right hand, but when I draw, I'll usually adjust my opacity and click all those things with my left hand, just so I use both hands to draw, but I only use one hand to actually draw lines on the screen. So I'm not ambidextrous. I'm just doing it over here so I can actually use my finger to adjust these, because that's what I'm used to. Anyway, but these are December-themed adoptables that I was doing. They're going to go up sale once I'm done with them. They'll hopefully go up on sale soon. They're going to be in auction. They'll be on DeviantArt. And I'm going to be putting them up for auction, and they're going to start at probably $15, I think, for these ones, especially because just the animals are pretty simple designs. But yeah, we have like a winter rabbit, we have an Arctic fox type character, we have a snow owl, and then we have, because I love A Christmas Carol, I have Ghost of Past, Ghost of Present, Ghost of Future. And because they're simpler designs, I'm going to probably sell them for about $15, $20 maybe, starting bid, and then with like a $1 minimum increase. But yeah, and then on top of that, Sorry, I was blanking for a second. I forgot to actually mention this in the last stream I did for these. I'm sorry, I'm almost done talking, I swear. Uh, in my last stream I forgot. By the way, if any of you are worried about my multi-touch issues, I will actually be getting a new iPad soon, hopefully. I mean, don't tell anyone I know that already. So that'll hopefully fix my issues and things will be a lot nicer. It'll be brand new and all that, so that'll be really, really great. It's my one gift, but you know. Anyway, so I forgot to mention this in the last stream, but if you see anything here in stream that you like and you really, really want it so badly and you have the money for it, all of these auto bid at $100. Which I know sounds a lot, but it's just so that, you know, I mean, you're basically buying it before anyone else gets a chance to. So, I don't know, if you're somebody who's into adoptables or something like that, and you have the money to do that, you know, feel free to reach out and ask about it. But yes, sorry, with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and, like, get started on these and finish these at least. Like I said, I'm going to color these last two that I haven't colored yet, and if the stream hasn't crashed, I'm going to actually shade them. So yeah, we're gonna start finishing up with present here. Oh, by the way, if anything looks different on my Procreate screen, it's because my iPad finally let me have the update. It finally let me software update, and then it finally let me have my Procreate update, finally, and I'm so excited. I'm not gonna mess... I'm very excited to mess with... they let you have two colors now. I am very excited to mess with I'm just reminding myself what the other one looks like. I am very excited to mess with the animation stuff, like super excited, but I'm probably going to hold off actually doing anything super serious animation-wise until I have my new iPad to do it, because it'll have more space and more storage and things like that. So, but I am super excited about it. So yes, we're gonna get to work on these. I'm thinking some good old jolly redhead type hair going on here, maybe, but like a darker... Oh, I forgot to put it over here. This is gonna totally confuse me. Oh, are you working now? Are you working now, left side of my screen? Are you no longer paralyzed? Oh no, you still are. Because why would you work? That's so weird for me to ever assume you would. Anyway. Let's make this just a little like just a little paler, so we can go for a little bit more tanned ginger, maybe, possibly, I don't know. Is it bad to have a balance between good and bad personality traits for your character? It is for my characters, but I think I keep hearing that it's bad in a sense. It's not bad to have a good balance between good and bad personality traits. It's typically good advice for when you're starting out making characters, because it helps you think a little bit more, helps you keep your characters a little bit more interesting. But the thing is, there's a little bit more to character design than just having like, oh, this trait is good. It's like, oh, they are generally optimistic, but they're also, a little bit stupid or whatever. Like, the thing is that personalities are far more complicated. Yes, starting off by thinking about, okay, give them half positive, half negative traits is a very good place to start out when you're very new to making characters, because it helps you think about balance a lot more with character personalities, and it helps you think about your character in a more three-dimensional way. Helps give them more layer to their personalities. But as you grow as a character designer, something you will learn very quickly is that a good personality trait isn't always good. And a bad personality trait isn't always bad. It depends on situations. People are we by nature are very layered people. There are traits that we can have that seem good in some ways, but if put in a certain situation, may not be good or could not be compatible with somebody else. For example, for example, you could be a very optimistic, very cheerful person. We typically associate optimism and cheerfulness with being a positive personality trait. But if you were to take someone who is optimistic and cheerful and say, take that and actually test it put it in a situation where, say, the person is manipulative, or the person is controlling, or the person is a liar or deceitful, or whatever you want to put with that. Suddenly the character's optimism and their cheerfulness and, if they like to see the good in people and all that, can be flipped around against them, because now they might trust somebody who is not a good person, or somebody who might harm them in the future. In contrary, if we're talking about, say, negative personality traits, like let's say again, like somebody, let's use the reverse of this. Let's say somebody is pessimistic and gloomy. We usually associate that with being negative personality traits, to be pessimistic and gloomy. While most of the time, yes, around other people, it might come off as being far more dislikable or hard to be around. It might make the person just be a bit more miserable in general. Let's put them in the same situation again. There's somebody who's deceitful or untrustworthy or manipulative. The pessimistic character might be more likely to see that than the optimistic character, just because of the way they view the world. It's all about sort of give and take and situational awareness. Not every trait is always good. Not every trait is always bad. And once you understand that, it gives you a far more better grasp on character design and personalities, and a far more deep understanding of them. And understanding that you don't need to perfectly balance your character out for one negative, one positive, because it all depends on A, the situations they are in, and B, the characters they are with. Because again, a lot of what writing a story isn't so much about a single character, it's about how those characters interact in the world they are in and with other characters in their story. And not only that, but you also have to consider the weight of the traits that they have. Having like a couple of good traits, but that aren't like really that exceptional or that noteworthy, can be outweighed by a single very bad flaw. You know what I mean? So you could be cheerful, you could be friendly, you could be amicable, all pretty general things that aren't really that uncommon. But say the character's fatal flaw is that when they get angry, they just go into an all-out rage that no one can stop. They freak out. Every other personality trait goes out the window. And even if that's their only real negative flaw, that one so outweighs all of the good ones that you've now balanced it by just having one very powerful negative trait. So making a perfect balance between positive and negative is, yes, it's not a bad way in any way, shape, or form to go about making characters. It can be a very useful way to make characters and set up characters and things like that. But it's definitely not the only way. It's all about what you're trying to achieve, and just an understanding on how characters are really made and how people work in general. Because we as people are typically not one-dimensional people. We aren't usually going to be able to list a perfect list of exactly the same amount of negative traits as positive traits. Some of our negative traits are probably going to be more... Oh, okay. Sorry, that was my mom. I'm back home for the holidays. So yeah, no, that's all I'll say. I need to stop rambling about it, but yeah, it's not a bad way to go about making characters at all, to make, to go with positive versus negative and things like that. But it is by far not the... Oh, my finger keeps trying to adjust it on the other side. This is going to be tedious. But again, it's by far not the only way to make characters in any way, shape, or form. And yeah, I hope that helped put it a bit more into perspective for somebody out there. Okay, now I'm gonna try something, and I hope this doesn't like totally screw up my screen. I don't know. Should I? I don't know. I'm gonna hold off. I don't want to screw up my stream. Not yet, anyway. I'll try it after I color these two, so I can at least have them colored. But yeah, my finger keeps trying to adjust on the other side. This is why I don't like having it over here. But I have to make do, because I can't fix it right now. We're just gonna have to deal with it, and it's okay. Everything's fine. It just makes it a lot harder to adjust sizes like I want to, brush sizes like I want to. Because this brush doesn't have pressure for size, just opacity. Which is great, because that's what I want, but it's not so great when you're trying to adjust sizes very quickly. Alright, sorry about that. Something that's been on my mind, how do you make good shipping dynamics? And if so, what's your personal favorite? I mean, I don't really think there's any one way that you can make a good shipping dynamic, because chemistry and stuff like that is a very complex thing. So I'm not going to really have a good, like, end-all be-all answer for you there. Because shipping dynamics are very much a, it depends situation. Because, you know, I don't know what kind of, like, there's so many different ways you can go about making a good ship or good shipping dynamics. So I'm not really going to have a good answer for you there. I don't really have a favorite kind of ship. I have, like, some favorite ship tropes. I made that one of those. I contributed when that meme was going around. I contributed some of my own, but other than that, I don't really have a solid favorite. Yeah, I'm going with purple. He's a party guy. I don't know if I like purple. I'm going to color it at least. So I can better change the color in a second. Yeah, I don't think I really like the purple as much as I thought I would. Yeah, I don't really like the purple as much as I thought I would, so we're just going to make it something else. Yeah, let's go with the teal. I like the teal. I'm going to do some gold trimming, because everyone likes some gold trimming, and by everyone, I mean me. Oop, I need a better light color. Oh gosh, why do you not look pleasant? Give me good gold. Oh no, I don't like it that I can't see the comparison. Uh-oh, okay. No, what the heck? Oh god. Oh god, I haven't messed with this enough. No, put it back. No, put it back. No, put it back. No, put it back. I don't... Okay, good. There we go. Jeez. Jeez Louise. I didn't appreciate that too much. Alright. do it here then. All right. Sorry, I was distracted. How would you say is a good way to make questionably good and questionably bad? So from the perspective you have to think they are good until you really think about it? Are you asking like how to make morally gray characters, or how to make characters that like appear good but like you realize when you sit down and think about it, oh no, they're actually a bad guy? Because those are both very different type of characters. I mean, I could probably give advice on either of them. I just need some clarification on what you're asking. Because morally gray characters are very different from deceptively good characters. Because one is going to require a more manipulative approach to the character, while the other is going to just be a more of a more psychological standpoint type thing. Appear good, but if you think about it, they have some really awful flaws, and the bad guys in the stories have a solid point. So you're asking how to make a villain who is like a protagonist villain, like a plot twist villain is what you're asking? Sorry, I'm waiting on the response because I know the stream's behind. I guess I'll just move on till I get a response from that one, I guess. Any advice on learning to like your own art? I have trouble with thinking my art sucks, even though I know I'm improving every day. I mean, I'm probably not going to have anything that's going to be like, bam, there you go. Because a lot of that's going to be your own psychological thing. I mean, the best thing I could advise to help is like redraw some old pictures so you can see that you're improving. If you don't like your art, then figure out what kind of art you like and try doing that. Because, like, unfortunately, if you don't like your own art, it might be the fact that you don't, it might just be that you don't like the style that you're working in which case it's just going to take some work to refine the style to something that you do like. And then if it's just more of an insecurity type thing, then you might just need to go back, like redraw some old pieces, work on some bigger pieces that you can be proud of and things like that. Redrawing art is always a good way to boost confidence, but I don't really have one that, I don't know you as a person, so I'm not going to be able to give anything that's going to help specifically you. Imagine like the protagonist of the story has a goal but doesn't realize the morality of it because other on their side don't give them the full story, and the antagonists know, and that's why they're antagonists. I'm really sorry, Blanco. I really don't understand what you're asking for exactly. It sounds like you're asking for a very, very specific type of character, but I'm not sure what you're asking for, like anti-hero. Because before it sounded like you were asking about a character that was morally gray, and then it sounded like you were asking about a character that was, like, you know, like a story that's supposed to mess with you, or it's like, oh, you're following the protagonist, but then the protagonist is the bad guy. But now it sounds like you're asking about a protagonist who doesn't know that the people they're working for are actually the bad guys. So I think I'm a little confused. What Nira said? A chaos... What? The chaotic neutral? Well, that doesn't... Wait. I have a character like that. I get what you mean. They think they're on the right side, but they weren't given the full story. Okay. So... The only thing I could tell you is that's gonna be... I mean, the only real advice I could give is just make sure that the stuff they know, just make sure you keep the correct stuff away from the audience, like the correct information, and don't find your right balance between your foreshadowing and your revelation, because if you foreshadow too much, then people are going to catch on way too quick, and then if you foreshadow not enough, then you're going to... like, it's gonna come out of nowhere and come out of left field. But, I mean, like, I think, because that's just gonna have to be something where, because that's a difficult sort of story to write, and that's gonna be one that's going to be learned with experience, I'm afraid. So it's gonna take some trial and error, like, writing something, asking people if they think, like, how they think it goes. That's also going to take some very, like, skilled, like, what information you keep away, you know, that sort of thing has to do very, very heavily with a plot twist type thing. I mean, a good example is that is actually, because I've been replaying Pokemon Mystery Dungeon recently, because I love that game, and my roommate lent me her copy of it so I can play it again. And I love that game because the story in that game is very, very good, and it has some great, well set up plot twists in there. So I guess spoilers if you've never played. If you've never played Pokemon, I'm talking about Explorers of Sky, Explorers of Darkness, Explorers of Time. But I love those games a lot. And they do a very, very good job with plot twists, and they do a very, very good... And one of the best things that they do, I think, in there is having a deceptive antagonist. So spoilers, if you've never played those games and you don't want to be spoiled, but they've been out for years. In the game, they introduce the character Dusknoir. And he's introduced as this amazing... like, famous, renowned explorer. He comes off very humble, very, like, oddly, like, mentor-like, you know? Very humble, very knowledgeable, very calm and collected, intelligent, you know, very cool guy, you know? And he's introduced in the story, and he helps you out, like, during certain things. And there's also the concept introduced of Grovyle, who... at the start of the story is kind of set up to be a main antagonist type thing, and he's going around stealing time gears, stopping time places, very, like, bad guy type stuff. And then you find out, plot twist, Grovyle's from the future, and so is Dusknoir. Dusknoir's been sent to capture this criminal, and that's the whole reason why he's been trying to be more low-key and more on the down low in the world. You know, and you're basically trying to help him capture Grovyle, and everyone, it makes sense, and you're like, yeah, cool, we're gonna do it. And then when they catch Grovyle and they're taking him back, he's like, hey, hey, main character and main character's friend, I want to talk to you. And you walk up and you're just like, man, we'll miss you. It's so sad. He's like, I guess this is goodbye. Or is it? And he yoinks you through the portal and into the future and, like, captures you as prisoners as well. And that's when you find out, plot twist, he's the bad guy. And and you find out that, like, he's the bad guy who is trying to stop Grovyle, who is the good guy, and there's a lot of other plot twists in there, like the fact that you actually knew Grovyle before you lost your memory and all this. It's a very good game, and I love it a lot. But they do that sort of plot twist very, very well, in my opinion, because you so don't really see it coming, because, like, I mean, Dusknoir is literally set up to be, like, the most like mentor like experienced. Everyone in the like no one in the game even like has any like I don't trust this guy, which is like a very obvious and very like it's a very obvious foreshadowing thing if there's ever a character who's like I don't know why, but I just don't trust this guy. And there's no characters like that in the game. So it's a very good like thing. I actually replayed that specific part earlier this morning, and whenever I saw the portal and I saw him walking, I'm like, oh, I remember this. He's gonna yoink me through the portal. And they're like talking, exposition, and I'm like, he's gonna do it. He's gonna yoink me through that portal. And I'm like, he's like, hey, I'm like, I named my character Snurples in this game. Don't ask me why, I just did. He's like, Snurples, Chimchar, I want to talk to you. And you walk up and you're like, goodbye. I'm like, he's going to do it. He's going to yoink me. And he's just like, or is it? And he grabs you and like yanks you through. And I'm like, he did it. He yoinked us. But yeah, it's a very good game. Like, it's very good with that plot twist. It is very well set up and everything makes sense. And there's a lot of plot twists on plot twists on plot twists in the game. But, so, like, honestly, the best way to write that kind of shit is just, like, to find media that does it well. Figure out how they did that, why it works well, how they made it work, and why it made sense or worked in that instance. Find some examples of where it worked badly. Figure out why it worked badly. To be honest, a lot of that kind of stuff is best explored by seeing how other people do it and seeing how it's successful in other work versus not successful in others. And that comparison can help you figure out how to write your own. That's usually how I go about things like that. So I hope that helped. Very rambly, of course, but yeah. But yeah, I mean, that kind of goes for a lot of things, really. If you ever have trouble or you don't know how to write a very specific type of story element or plot twist or whatever you want to do, the best way to go about it, in my opinion, is to just find media that you feel like has done it well, or media you feel like has done it poorly, and look at them and analyze them and figure out why it didn't work in one place or why it worked in another. And that can help you figure out how to do it yourself and help you learn by dissection, kind of a thing. Give them some rosy cheeks real quick. God, I hate having this thing over here on the right, but I gotta deal with it. Ugh. It's fine. Everything's fine. Why wouldn't it be fine? No! Screen. Another character question. How do you make a strong female character who isn't just strong because she can punch and kick people and swears like a sailor? Write her like a person? That sounds really weird, but yeah, just write them like an actual human being instead of, like, boiling down their character to, like, I'm a strong female character. I love using this example, so I'm sorry for anyone who's heard me say this, like, 8 times. The best, in my opinion, I think the best example on how to write, like, to show people that you can write a female, like, a very, like, a strong emotional character, and honestly this goes for both men and women. You don't need a man to punch a bunch of demons in the face to make him look strong. But I feel like one of my best examples of it. Another thing too is I would also suggest if you're writing a character and you want her to be female and strong, maybe don't point out every 5 seconds that she's supposed to be a strong female character, because then you're acting as if that's weird and as if that, like, women can't be strong, which most people in a modern generation don't think that. So, like, I don't know. It's that's always my big gripe, is whenever media will have a strong female character, that's fine, but whenever the media or the people writing it have to point out every, like, 10 seconds, she's a female and she's in the protagonist role. It's like, yeah, we know. No one can, like, it's not that big of a deal can we just watch the story, please? But anyway, but like, one of I think the best examples, in my opinion, of how you can have a character who is emotional but still strong and not make them, like, mutually exclusive, is not the documentary. There is on Netflix. There's that movie that is about Ted Bundy, and I like it a lot. I can't remember the exact title word for word, but it's the movie they had with Ted Bundy that's actually not a documentary, and it's more of a showing, and it goes more off of the perspective of the woman who was dating him at the time when he was first being looked into for certain murders and things like that. And I find that, for one thing, that movie is very, very good if you like kind of darker movies. Because for one thing, they never show you like any actual murder on in the movie until the very end, when he actually confesses to her and admits to one thing, and then they finally show you pictures. And I think it's a very good choice, because it kind of helps because I mean, obviously we as an audience, we know Ted Bundy killed people, like we know that, but it's like helping by not showing that to the audience. It helps you better understand how she couldn't have believed, like how she was in denial about it. Because one of the biggest things when it comes to like the spouses of serial killers, or the girlfriends or the boyfriends of serial killers, there's always the question of like, well, how didn't you know? And people have a hard time believing that the family or the spouse or whatever didn't know. And so I think by the movie just simply not really actually showing us anything on camera, it helps you better understand why she wouldn't have believed it, or why she would have been in denial about it, without making it seem like she was just stupid, you know? Because that's, I think, what a lot of people either consciously or unconsciously believe. But it's a very good show, and I would very much recommend it. It's very good, and also this sounds so morbid, but I was so excited to see the absolute stupidity of his first, like, real jail escape attempt finally dramatized. The one where he jumped out of it's ridiculous. The one where he, like, jumped out of a 2-story window, and he'd, like, practiced for it for months, and some guard was idiotic enough to leave him alone. And it was like, it's dark, but it's really funny to me. So I was like, it was great for me as somebody who knew the story very well to see that dramatized. But anyway, back to my point. I'm sorry. So again, like I said, the story mostly follows a lot of the story does follow the journey of his girlfriend at the time, and her struggles with how she is very much in denial that he's done this. She doesn't want to, even though, like, it's very obvious, or, oh god, dang it, my battery. Even though in some part of her obviously does believe it, she also is in denial about it, and she doesn't want to believe it. And, like, there's a lot of how she, like, is struggling and fighting in her internal conflict. So the ending of the movie is whenever she finally goes he's in jail, on, like, oh my god, iPad, please. He's finally in jail and all of that, and she's finally going to confront him to try and get some closure years later. And she has her argument with him. I won't go into every little detail about it. And she's finally given confirmation that he did something. Because she shows him some pictures and asks what happened to this girl. Like, where is her head? What happened to her? And I know that's really dark, I'm sorry, but, like, that's how the story goes. And he finally writes on the window hacksaw, basically confirming he knows, and that he, did that. And it's just finally that sort of confirmation she truly needed. But obviously she's overwhelmed with emotion. So she ends up leaving the room, and she leaves, on her way out, she ends up having, like, overwhelmed with emotion, so she ends up having to stop and crouch down for a minute and sit down to cry for a second. But she gets up and she walks out of there to her daughter and her new boyfriend, who are there waiting for her at the car, so they can finally leave and she can leave it behind. And for me, that is like a great example of how she didn't need to punch Ted Bundy in the face to be like a strong female character, or to, and obviously these are based on real people, so it's a little odd to call them characters, but it's a good example of how like how you can make somebody emotional but still not need them to be like need emotion to feel like weakness, because I think that's a big thing that media and a lot of stories have a very bad time at showing and demonstrating, that emotions aren't weakness, that you can be an emotional person and have stuff get to you, but the strength is after those emotions have affected you to be able to stand up and keep walking. And I think that's a far more powerful statement than needing to watch somebody punch someone in the face because they're an asshole. You know what I mean? So I know that was a long side tangent, but I think it's a good example. And it's a very good movie and a very good demonstration of a fact that, you don't need to have a strong character, male or female, to have a strong character. They don't need to fight anyone. They don't need to be super cool and rad and do flips and whatever. Not that that's even a bad thing either. But you can have a character be emotional and not have to be stoic all the time, and still have them be strong. Some emotional strength is strength as well. So I hope that made sense, and I hope that helped, because I too am a little tired of strong female characters being associated with whether or not she can kick a man's ass. Because I feel like that just spreads a bad example of people in general. The idea that our strength is only boiled down to the fact of whether or not we can kick someone's ass. But that's besides the point. Mm-hmm. I say that because I write stories where that's not always the solution that happens. I write I have a lot of themes that I can't talk about too much because a lot of them are spoilers. But I write a good amount of stories about like characters that have either abusers or villains that like they don't need to murder in order to get justice for their past or anything like that. But anyway, I hope that helped, and I hope I don't know. I hope that helped understand a little bit better of how some of that stuff works. Just I don't know. Anyway, I need to stop rambling. Hang on one second. I need to check something real quick. Phone. Hello, phone. Can you just load, please? Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm good. Sorry. But yeah, I don't know. That sort of topic about, oh my god, please, iPad, please. Oh, I'm getting a new one soon. I hope it fixes a lot of these problems. They had a strong... I don't know what your book you're talking about, so I'm sorry about that. I don't remember. I mean, especially because my friends and I, we talk about a lot of different stuff, so I have no idea. All right. I'm going to pause for a second and let my stylus charge, so if y'all want to ask any burning questions for me to ramble on, now would be a good time. while my stylus charges, and then we'll get on to death, and everything will be cute. I'll at least, like, put down his colors real quick, but, because I can do that with my finger just fine, so. What brush do I use to color? I typically use, it's not going to look very good because I'm using my finger right now, but I typically use this hard airbrush right here. I just tend to like it. It's good for, like, again, it's hard to see it right here, but it's good for, like, getting softer and good for edges and stuff like that. And it usually does a pretty good job at not being, like, super, like, bumpy on the sides or anything like that. And it's also can cover a larger space, but also can cover very tiny spaces. So it's very adaptable like that. I also do, but for a lot of detailing, I actually will go back to my technical pencil again for, like, sometimes for trimming or things like that, just because I like the texture. But yeah, I typically use hard airbrush for most of my color blocking. He wears grapes because he likes wine. Speaking of ship dynamics, how do you make two characters who are hot-headed be in a good relationship, especially if one of the hotheads is emotional? Well, I mean, to be a hothead, you have to be emotional in some capacity, so, I mean, that would depend on what characters you have and whether or not they're compatible, because some characters are both two hot-headeds, and that can turn into romantic passion, or whatever you want to call it, but other people are hotheads, and they just butt heads, and then it doesn't really work out, so that would just depend on, like, a lot more about your characters, about their personalities, their backstories, their... you know, whether or not their chemistry works out in that kind of way. So, all I could say is just make sure it's not forced, because, like, that's the big thing, is that if you feel as if a romance is being forced, you either need to change the characters so it no longer feels forced, or you just need to not make them have a romantic relationship. Because, I mean, I did that a lot in the past, because I used to think protagonists needed to have romantic interests because I was a fool and media lied to me. So, yeah, so, like, I just say that, like, make sure you write what feels natural, and make sure that if things, and, like, you can still keep being hot-headed is one trait in Medi. So, you know, you can make it work, though. It's not something that doesn't work, and you can make it work. Just depends on the characters. I forgot you drew a character named Death last time, so I got confused when you said, and then we'll move on to Death. Well, it's Ghost of Christmas Future, but I mean, in the story, it's supposed to represent death, so, you know. What would you say is the best way to get criticism on a book while you're writing it? I would say the best way would be... Okay, this is going to sound very annoying, but if you're writing a book, like writing an actual book with a beginning, a middle, and an end, write your whole rough draft first. Make sure you have it as fleshed out as possible. Don't have a lot of areas where you're going to say, oh, I'm going to change this or whatever. Just change it, and then give it to somebody that you very much trust. And not only trust in the sense that you don't think they're going to, like, steal your work or something like that, but also trust them to give you a full, honest opinion and not just sugarcoat and say, yeah, it sounds great. Like, somebody you really think is going to be honest with you. And I'd also recommend you try and find a couple of people who are willing to do that, because those different, like, you could have a friend who could be very biased and could, like, not really like something, and then another friend who says no, like, and then, like, 5 other friends tell you it's fine. So the more the merrier, typically, when it comes to getting criticism. But the reason why I say write it out, write the whole thing out first, even if you need to go back and correct, like, spelling errors and things, go write it out, the whole thing first, and give it to friends. And the reason why I say that is because, as someone who has tried to criticize things and give advice and stuff in the past, the hardest thing to give good advice on is when the person tells you, is that when you ask about, okay, so what about this part of this? It's like, okay, so but this part of the story, and you say, wait, but I'm going to change that. Or, well, that's going to happen later. or, well, because if they can't have the full narrative, beginning, middle, and end to read and criticize, it's going to affect their opinion. Because you might have a segment in the very beginning that seems weird or stupid or annoying that makes total sense halfway through the book because you explain it. But if you don't have it explained in the book, your friend or whoever you're giving it to can't really give you a fair criticism on it. They might tell you it's weird because they don't know how it's going to go. Or you might tell them, don't worry, it makes sense later, and then they can't really criticize something because they don't know how it's going to go. So that's what I say the best way to do it is to make sure you have everything written out first. Beginning, middle, and end. Even if you still need to go back and edit it, even if you still need to go like flip some sentences around, make sure you have everything narratively written down. So, but yes, that would be my advice to you for that. Because it trust me, it's very, it's much easier to criticize something when you have all of the, it's why I tell myself not to get too critical about a story until I've seen the whole thing. It's why when I made my one giant honkin' review for the first time of a video game, I told myself as much as I didn't really care to finish it, I had to because I didn't want to criticize something that I didn't see to the very end. So that's my advice, and I hope that helps. What brush do I use for liner? I use the technical pencil for all of my liner. It's not going to look very good here because I'm using my finger, so my pressure sensitivity is not here. Oh, hello, cat. My kitten is here to say hello. Are you here to hijack my stream? Oh, goodness, hello. Oh, I'm going to put that over here so you can't... Oh, gosh. Oh, goodness. Oh, you're so cute. Sorry, my cat is here. Sorry, I hope I'm not missing anything. How do you write two characters that are together, but they are on different sides and don't... Again, that goes back to what I'd said earlier about, like, that would be something where it's like, go find... Oh my god, cat! No, don't eat my iPad! No! I'm not talking about my drawing iPad, I mean my little one that I'm watching the stream on. Don't eat it! Mister! Sir! Don't eat that! It's not edible! Oh, goodness. Oh, he wants to play. He wants to play. Oh, he has the wide eyes of death. Oh, gosh. Sorry. Oh, my cat. My cat. His name, for anyone who doesn't know, I have two cats. Oh, my gosh. We have the big cat that we've had for years. His name is... Don't bite that. Don't you bite that, mister. We have our bigger cat that we've had for quite a few years. His name is Pumpkin, but we call him Cat so much that he actually responds to Cat. So about 6 or 7 months ago, I think, we got a new kitten, and his name is CJ because it stands for Cat Jr. And he is an absolute rascal. He is an absolute rascal. I'm talking to you, mister. Talking to you, sir. Mr. Oh gosh, he leaps. I don't even know if y'all can hear him, like, bouncing around. He is an absolute gremlin. And he'll come visit me sometimes when I'm sitting up here. Alright, anyway, sorry. Sorry, I hope I didn't, if I missed anything, you're free to ask it again. I'm sorry. Mr. CJ over here hijacking my stream. Yes, you. Yes, you. I'm talking about you. Sir. I know he's gonna chill. Your eyes have become so beautiful and yellow. They looked a lot more gray when you were a kitten. Now they look so pretty and yellow. My son is hungry. Nah, he just wants to bite everything. He's learned he can't bite people because if he tries to bite us because he's excited, he will immediately stop himself and lick us as if he's apologizing, and it's both adorable and also he's such a girl. Okay, now you're gonna attack my feet. Are you gonna attack my feet? Are you gonna attack that monster that's under the covers that you can't see but it's totally there? Are you, sir? Oh, he's thinking about it. All right, sorry. Yeah. How chonk is he? He's not chonk. He is very lonk. He's a long. When you take my older cat is chonk. Pumpkin is chonk. Pumpkin is chonk. CJ is far more lonk. When you take pictures of Pumpkin, all of his pictures look very regal and majestic. He looks very regal and majestic. Anytime you take a picture of CJ, he looks like he looks like you caught him in the middle of of going to the bathroom. Like he always looks like super surprised, and he looks like such a little gremlin. Can I just pet you? Will you let me just pet you? No, don't attack me, sir. Oh, you want to play, but I can't play. I'm trying to do art. I'm trying to make money. It's very important. Oh, there you go. He's having a time. Noodles and milk, if you keep spamming, I'm going to end the stream. I've talked about that many times in the past. It's not coming back. So, please stop. If you keep spamming, I will ban you. I will not hesitate. Anyway, sorry. All right. Back to work. I go. Hooray. Going for dark and spooky. That's what we're doing. Actually, I know what I'm gonna do. Because I think it's cute. We're gonna go dark and spooky. We're gonna give him gonna put him in some light gray to emphasize the dark void. Oh God, I hate having it on the other side. I keep forgetting. And for anyone who just tuned in, it's not Procreate's fault, it's my fault because it's my iPad's fault because the multi-touch is freaking out. But it's fine. I can't show you. I can't show you right now because I have I can't do that on this stream, but I'll try and put more pictures on like Twitter or something because they're good boys. Well, one of them's a gremlin boy, but they're good boys. Do you have an Instagram? I have an Instagram. I don't use it anymore. I may someday use it again, but I just don't really use it anymore. I don't really like it. I might use it again because I have considered using it again for a very specific reason. If I ever reach that point someday where I have the ability to do such a thing, but I'm not gonna use it again for art and things like that, just because I don't really like how I don't like a lot of Instagram's format, and B, I don't really like how Instagram treats artists on their platform. Like, for me, it feels like a lot easier for somebody on Instagram to just repost someone's art and get no consequences for it. It's like a lot of the same reasons I don't like Amino, to be honest, but I also just generally don't like their square format. I don't like that I can't post my own fucking art in the same diameters that it comes in, and that I have to weirdly crop shit and all that kind of thing. So, it's just personal taste. I don't personally like it. I know a lot of other people do, but it's just not for me. We'll go. I'll force myself to use silver because I need to force myself to use silver more. Make these more silvery looking. As opposed to gold, because I use gold quite a lot because I love gold, but I need to make myself use silver more. And I guess anytime I draw gold, it could technically be brass, but you never know. Let's make the tassels kind of a dark grayish, like a grayish brown. And I'm going to fade this out so I can see a little bit better about what I'm coloring. What's my favorite character dynamic? I don't really have a favorite character dynamic. I have a couple favorites. I like, one that I use a lot because I do like it is when you have a lot of unprepared parents now having to raise a child or something like that, because I find throwing kids into a group dynamic is very interesting, because I feel like you can see a lot, it kind of forces characters to either change or act a certain way. I just think it's a great way to really bring out something in the characters you have. So I love plots like that where it's kind of like, here's these characters who are absolutely unqualified as parents, and here's the kid they have to take care of now. If that wasn't obvious why I like that kind of thing. I don't know, if it wasn't obvious that I like that. I also love... I love writing... This one's a bit on the darker or more serious side of character writing. I find plots fascinating when they involve, characters, the sort of evolution of a character with a struggling with either an abusive situation or a relationship, just because I find those stories important and lessons in them important, and I enjoy having a message in there of being able to... I find a plot where the center focus is helping fix helping somebody get back on their feet and get over a traumatic past is very heartwarming and uplifting in a sense. And it's hard for me to go into details because there are so many of them that I have that are major spoilers for stories I have. But I find those kinds of plots in a more serious way interesting to write, and I don't want to say fun because that has weird implications about me, because it's fun to write any kind of serious stuff sometimes, or dramatic sort of thing, but I find them very inspiring and God, I don't know how to describe it in a way that's not going to sound weird or I'm trying to trivialize something, because I'm really not. I like having those stories because I like having the lessons about it and kind of showing... a big thing I like having with them is the idea of that I think a lot of people struggle to understand, the concept of because I hear it a lot when it comes to talking about, say, when people are abused or manipulated in a relationship or something, or they become an asshole because the person they were with kind of made them an asshole. And I always you'll always hear stuff about how oh, well, why couldn't they see through that? It's so obvious. And yeah, it is very obvious when you're on the outside and you have all the information and you can really sit down and analyze it, and you don't have your emotions invested in something. And it's so bizarre because I can't even say that I like these stories because, oh, it's from a personal experience, because it's not. There's a lot of stories I have where I want to kind of show people and help people try to understand how someone could be manipulated and better understand the sort of point of view of somebody who is in a situation like that, you know? But I guess that's my favorite dynamic to write, because I do find it inspirational, and I do find it, you know, like, something about having a character, like, who is, I'm not going to say who, because again, it is major spoilers, but like, there's a story I have where a big chunk of it is there's a character who gets in a very, like, abusive situation, doesn't realize it, and finally gets away from it, but has to still struggle with the idea of, like, you know, wanting to go back, like, reminiscing on the good parts, still struggling to kind of get over it, you know, with their, oh god, my cats are fighting downstairs, but, like, while, like, struggling to get over that kind of thing, but they have, like, their families there, and them trying to help, like, comfort them and things like that, and it's just, you know, it's something I enjoy writing, because I think, it's emotionally intense, and I do kind of like intensity in that regard in stories, and I like dark stories too. I think that the message that it sends, the help of understanding that people can, like, helping other people understand how someone could be manipulated, and better understand the point of view, is very important. And I also think that you know, at the end, whenever the character is finally kind of free of that and finally sort of moves on, kind of a thing, is very inspiring and very heartwarming. So, you know, a lot of different reasons, but I hope that made sense, and I hope I didn't make it sound bad or something like that. Yeah, it makes me upset sometimes, because I want to, like, every time I talk about it, like, I want to dive into, like, the couple of characters I have that have that huge sort of important thing, and like, I can't talk about them because they're major spoilers for my stories. One problem about having flawed or dark characters is that most people will never let them change. They just stay in a bad spot because it makes people like them more with the problems than without it. Yeah, it is a sad sort of situation, and there's always the very difficult issue of, at what point are we glamorizing something like, say, depression or abuse? And it's hard, it's a very gray area, so it's very hard to say where the line is in those kind of situations, because sometimes, and I'm going to say this carefully, like, hear me out here. Sometimes in a story, the idea of glamorizing, say, something like abuse might be important to the whole story, because it might not be glamorizing the abuse itself, but rather showing why somebody in that situation might, like, not see the red flags or see it as abuse. And I only say that because it only works in the context that at the end of the story, the character is going to get out of that situation and then understand what was wrong with it. And then, like, start to kind of come out of the sort of rose-tinted haze. You know, you can't see red flags with rose-tinted glasses. So I think in certain narrative, that's why it's such a hard thing to tell. Like, for example, what's it called? No, I know exactly what I'm talking about, but I don't remember the name of it. There is if somebody knows the name of what I'm talking about while I talk about it, please, like, inform me so I can say it for the chat. There's a very specific story, that it's an anime, and there's a big issue with it where the story itself is about an abusive relationship, and the story itself does not glamorize that abusive relationship. Is it Killing Stalking? I think that might be what it's called. I can't remember. I'm so sorry. This is not helping my example. But like the story itself does not necessarily glamorize that relationship, and the idea of the relationship is getting out of the, like, you know, not, it's meant to be very dark and very you know, serious, and not, yeah, killing, stalking, that's right. So like it's not that the story itself is glamorizing, but there were people who watched the story that then took that and they glamorized it, and they made it seem like a good, positive thing when the story itself did not. But then there were people who would look at that, and rather than understanding that it was a miscommunication between, that there were fans who were not understanding that the story itself was not a good story, and instead taking it and trying it to turn it into a good story, and they were ascribing sort of bad people in a fandom who don't understand the story, and then saying that must be like, that's the story itself glamorizing abuse, which it wasn't. And that's why it's such a difficult thing to figure out where the line is, because like I said, you can glamorize something and like have it work in a narrative sense as to why it was being glamorized. Like I said, the example of glamorizing an abusive relationship so that the character can get out and you can better understand why they would have not seen the red flags. In contrast of, like, you know, it's just all, it very much depends on context. And I think that we can't say that, like, but people don't always understand that it very much depends on context, you know? But I hope that made sense. It's just a very complex debate, and it's one that I've had to consider and think about a lot, just because I do quite love dark stories, and I do quite like, and that's not even talking about the difference between glamorization and romanticism versus artistic representation. Like, showing something in like an artistic, cinematic way is different than romanticization and glamorization. You can show something in a cinematic, artistic way without it being inherently romanticism or inherently glamorization or anything like that. And people don't understand that. You know, you can show, for example, a murder scene in a artistic, cinematography sort of focused way without it being inherently romanticized. But because there are some people who don't understand it, they see kind of an artistic death scene and immediately think that's the creator glamorizing it or making it romanticized. And that's an entire other debate between the whole line of, like, where the line is drawn between artistic choice and romanticism. But gosh, I need to stop going down this rabbit hole. Yay, I finished Ghost of Future. I'm so sorry. But, yeah, it's very, like, it's a very interesting conversation, I think, that I like having. And I like it more when there's a specific sort of like movie or book or show that you can talk specifically about, because it helps. It's a better way to have a conversation about it when you have that exact thing you can talk about, you know? There's a big difference between having a story that uses abuse for informational and story sense than the whole, I'm going to make this OC depressed because I love the aesthetic. Exactly. Like, you know, because like I have like a character, like I have characters that have say like self-harm scars because it's from their character and things like that. But there's a very big difference between them having them because it's a part of their story and having them because just like, well, I just kind of like that aesthetic, which is, or like I just like how, like, I don't want to say I like how they look, or it's like I want, like, you know, that's where we start treading into sort of the glamorization territory that is really bad. But, you know, but, Yeah, mental illness shouldn't be used to make characters more interesting. Exactly. That's something that I think, and granted, there is a learning curve, I think, where there are a lot of teenagers who will do that because they think they need to do that to make more characters more interesting. And so I think in that regard, there should be more a focus on educating people in that regard, as opposed to just getting angry at them and, you know, yelling at them for doing such a thing. But I do think there are a lot of people who kind of like, hey, I need to make this character more like deep and interesting. Just give them like a mental illness, even though, believe it or not, you can have deep emotional conflicts and deep emotional like problems without having to have a mental disorder. Like, you know, like I'm just going to use this as an example. Anxiety is both a mental disorder and just an emotional state, depending on the context it's used, which is frustrating because it's so hard to be able to describe the difference in a casual conversation. Someone can feel the emotion anxiety or feel anxious without having the mental illness anxiety. And on the contrary, somebody with like anxiety doesn't just mean that they're just feeling anxious or feeling or just have like the same level of emotion of anxiety. And it's like, which is a very difficult thing. Like it's a very difficult thing to sort of like say in like casual conversation, because it's so hard to like explain the difference. And I think there's a lot of people who really don't understand that concept. I mean, there's a lot of people who, this is why self-diagnosis is very, very bad for mental illness particularly, because it is so easy to read the symptoms online and think, oh yeah, I feel anxious sometimes. I must have anxiety, because that's not the case. That's why you should always go get diagnosed by a trained professional, just FYI. You know, and so like you can have a character who does not have anxiety but still feels extremely anxious about something, you know, and be able to write that character feeling that that anxiety, you know, without them needing to have anxiety. And like, so that's something I think people need to better understand, is that I think that comes from a amateur writing standpoint sort of thing, like somebody who doesn't quite understand how psychology works or how people work, because like to be able to not realize that you don't need to give your character, I mean, hell, you don't even need to give your character some like serious traumatic backstory to have them be interesting. I mean, that's a big thing that I try to focus on with Lunaverse. Main character Luna does not have a traumatic backstory. She does not have any serious, like, life-changing trauma. She doesn't have any, cool, like, wild powers. She doesn't have anything. She is literally a normal human girl. Like, that's it. And that's the point. Because a big part of her arc and the story itself is explaining the fact that she doesn't need to be some cool comic book character or have like a serious backstory or even have like trauma to get over in order to like be an important character or like save the universe in a sense, you know, to be cheesy about it. Because her entire point is that she is supposed to be the emotionally stable one. And that's a big part of it. She does not have a lot of like she has her like stuff. She has plot stuff like bonding with her sister and things like that. Like trying to get along with people that she doesn't usually get along with, that kind of thing. But she doesn't have like a lot of emotional things to get through, like a lot of the other characters in the story do. She doesn't have like, you know, she doesn't have like Jackson's frustration about trying to figure out who his dad is or trying to like help his mom, or the emotional strain of having to leave his mom and things like that when he was 17. She doesn't have the kind of like you know, like kind of turmoil or inner turmoil that say like Sphinx has, because she's still not quite over the fact that she kind of doomed her entire kingdom, you know, because she got cocky and she got too emotional. doesn't have the moral grips of like, oh, am I a bad person? Am I a good person? I don't know. I try to be a good person, but I'm a bad. She doesn't have a lot of that kind of stuff. She doesn't have the dramatic, serious, dystopian backstory that Jade does. And that's the point, is that she's supposed to be kind of the level middle ground who's supposed to be a bit kind of like the Rock of the story in a weird sense, because she's a lot more emotionally stable. She's a lot better equipped mentally to be able to help people. But it's just like, I wish people would kind of push a little bit like that. You don't need to have a character with a super traumatic backstory or super serious mental illness in order to make it interesting. You can, and like you can write a story about, so like for example, I wish there would be somebody who could focus on a story about someone with, say, DID, and just make the story specifically about them having to grow and work with that sort of mental illness and things like that. And I think that could be a very, like, its own story just by itself, that entire concept. And, so things like that. So it's not something that's inherently bad to ever write a character. DID is dissociative identity disorder. It's it used to be called multi-personality disorder, which I'm sure people have heard more. But it's now known as dissociative identity disorder. It's where you have it better describes what it is. Because people used to think it's more like split personalities, but it's not. We have a better understanding of it now, and I've done a lot of research into the subject. It's where typically something very, like, someone will have something very, very traumatic happen to them, typically at a young age, and it will result in their personality. Used to describe it as their personality being split, but that's not. We have a better understanding of it now. It's more of a personality fracture, to where they will have different identities in their own mind, and it's often used as sort of, it's kind of in an odd way. I think the best way to describe it is it evolves from trauma as a sort of defense mechanism. And so I think there's, what's the name? There's a specific channel that I think you can go watch that's very good with educating about it. Shoot, I can't remember it. But I would recommend, if you're interested in learning more, please do some research about it. It's a very fascinating thing, and I think more people, I feel like people need to understand it more, and that kind of thing, especially because can and media a lot of times be portrayed as something very terrifying, which it is in concept scary, but I think it's one of those things that I feel like is more scary for the person experiencing it. But yeah, so I do more research if you're interested in learning about it. I think it's a very, very fascinating thing. I will say, I could get into the fact that how livid I was when I started hearing about people who were kind of like self-diagnosing themselves with DID, and or acting as if they had like, it was during the very bad Tumblr era where it's like everyone was trying to get as like, like, it was not great. I didn't like it. It was not a cool time to be alive. But yeah, anyway, sorry. I'm too shading. Let's shade some of these. And I will say now, if my stream at any time crashes in the next, while I'm shading these, I won't resume the stream. I'm just going to go ahead and call it off, and then I'm just going to shade the rest of them off camera. So I'm just letting you all know now, in case that does happen. But I will go ahead and shade these and hope for the best. So if at any time the stream randomly stops, just know that I won't bring it back, but just know that it's because the stream crashed. So I've got a friend with DID, and it's not like they wig out and switch to another person on you, but I know it can be bad enough to where the person in question can pass out from it. Yeah, it's, that's one thing that I think a lot of people misconstrue, is that it's typically not like some crazy flipping between personalities. It's often more, a switch is more, and it's very difficult to find like a good example of this because there are so many people who fake the disorder, uh, so they do it like it's not real. But typically it's actually often more a more like it can take a couple of minutes. It's usually more like somebody will like zone out, like totally just kind of like feel like they've left their body for a minute, and then they'll come back almost as someone entirely different. um and to see like a genuine one puts it a lot more perspective. But that's a big misconception, is the idea that it's not like just somebody flip-flopping and snapping back and forth. It's much more gradual than that most of the time. Yeah, it's a for me it's a very fascinating thing to learn about, and I think it's something that I think people should. Oh, did they ooh, I don't really know if I like this too much. But I think that it's worthwhile to look into and do some research on, because I think it's very, not only I think is it a rather fascinating thing to learn about, but I also think it can be a very important thing to learn about, to understand it, So anyway, sorry, this is kind of random and breaking the topic, but could I ask the theme of the small hooded baby? They're Ghost of Christmas Present, Past, and Future. Anyway, off from the serious topics. Do you think that self-insert stories can be written well and even in published stories? I mean, they exist. So, like, for me, self-inserts are just a tricky thing to do well when you're an amateur, because, but there's, like, so many published stories out there. Not all of them are great stories, but there are so many stories published out there that, where the main character's inspiration for the characters was either themselves or somebody they knew in real life or something like that. So it's not something that you shouldn't do. My only thing is that usually the difficulty of writing an actual self-insert, in my opinion, is that it's interesting because I think a lot of people think that writing a self-insert is somehow cheap or easy, but it's actually, in my opinion, it's harder to write a good like self-insert of yourself than it is to write someone who isn't yourself. And the reason why is because when you're writing yourself, it can be difficult to have enough self-awareness to make yourself interesting. Because it's very hard. We don't really realize how we would react in certain situations. It's so easy, for example, to watch someone on TV make a stupid choice and think, oh, I wouldn't do that. When you probably would if you were in that situation, but you don't know that because you're not in that situation, and you probably never will be. So that's the difficulty of writing a good self-insert, is being able to not only be self-aware enough about yourself to be able to write yourself in a believable and relatable way to your audience, but also being able to not get caught up on sort of accidentally kind of having a bit of an ego in a sort of weird way, where it's like you are scared to let anything bad happen to you or to make yourself seem stupid, which is why typically it's better to start with a character based on yourself, but then let that character separate themselves from you as the story progresses. But it just depends on what you're doing. But you can have a very successful story with a character based on yourself, I would just say it's definitely a more difficult thing to do because many people aren't very self-aware, and sometimes people think they are self-aware, but they really aren't, But yeah. Do you have any advice in feeling more confident in your gender identity? I'm a trans guy too. Sometimes I struggle with that. I know it's not something you just get over, so don't worry if you can't answer. I don't know you very personally. So it's going to be hard for me to give you specific advice that's going to help you. Um, for me, because I can only really speak mostly on my own personal experience. And a big thing for me was understanding myself and my identity, both in the more like transgender way, but also in the gender expression kind of way, because there is such a big difference. Um, and a lot of people don't quite get that, and that's something that actually happens on both sides of the coin, from both like people who don't believe that transgenderism is a thing, which it is, and also there are people who do believe it and might even consider themselves trans, but also believe that gender roles are still apparently a thing to them. It's an unfortunate thing. The world is much more gray than it appears sometimes. But for me, personally, what helped me better have more confidence in myself had more to do with my own personal acceptance of myself than it did with anybody else. There's a reason why I personally don't really care if somebody doesn't know that I'm like a he and like calls me a she, and why I don't correct people unless like I plan to be friends with them or I plan to know them better. That's why I don't usually like correct a waiter at a restaurant or anything like that. And the reason why is because for me it's less about everyone else knowing what my preferred pronouns are and more about me being able to like knowing who I am, you know? It's the idea, and part of that was because I think that even if I was from the get-go born in the body that I was comfortable with, born in the body that I wanted to have, or that I should have had, it's the idea that when I was a kid, it probably would have still bothered me if people called me a she. But at the point that I was, when I did discover it, I wouldn't have been bothered. And the reason why is because it has, for me, it is far more about, understanding myself. And some of that had nothing to do with my gender or my sex at all. My story has a lot to do with not only my gender discovery was the catalyst in my eyes, but what it led to was a discovery on all these other things about me that I wanted to improve and that I wanted to change about myself and improve. For example, I was very insecure. I lacked confidence. I was like, well, why can't I change that? Why can't I make myself, if I want to be more confident, why can't I? And so I worked towards becoming more confident, working towards, I wanted to be funnier. Like I wanted to be like more, I always admired the people I knew, the friends I had that were like, could crack jokes and were always just going to say something as soon as it were like super snappy and witty and all that kind of thing. I always wanted to be, and then it was like, well, why can't I be that? Why can't I practice and try and get funnier and see if I can figure out how to be funnier? So a big period of 2016 for me was not just like my identity as like gender wise and sex wise, it had a lot to do with just me as a person. So I would tell you this right now, that making yourself more confident in your gender identity may have far less to do with your gender itself and far more to do with your personality and learning to be more confident as a person as a whole. A lot of people, I think, have this, or there's a lot of people, I think, unfortunately, a lot of transgender people who have this misinformed idea that when they get their sex change, everything will be fixed, everything will be great. But that's unfortunately not the case. Body dysphoria as a whole as well comes from more than just feeling like you're born in the wrong body in the case of being transgender, and it's usually going to have far more psychological roots than just that. So the best advice I could give from my own personal experience is that for me, my self-confidence journey was only in part because of gender discovery, and more had to do with me figuring out the parts of my personality and parts of myself that I didn't like and that I wanted to change and make better, and then doing that. You know, only you can really change your personality and make it, and it's a level of knowing, of being self-aware, what you don't like and what you want to change or what you want to be like, and then making the steps to try and figure out and change it and feeling the waters. And you're going to screw up, and you're going to, like, you know, for example, if you want to be funnier, you're going to have experiences where people don't find you funny, and that's a part of the process. If in anything, humor is, in its own weird way, just as much of an art in itself. But to be, like, whether it's, you know, being more confident, being more helpful, being more outgoing, whatever it might be to help you enjoy yourself as a person more, is going to help you have more confidence in yourself as a whole. Until eventually you might not really care what someone else calls you or whatever, and stuff like that. And that's, again, it's based a lot in my own personal experience, but that's always what I said about my sort of journey, in a sense, is that for me, while gender discovery was the catalyst of all of these things, of me starting to fix myself and me starting to kind of learn to like myself more, it certainly was not the only factor. And it was just the first thing that really made me open my eyes and realize that I could, you know, like, that there was so much to myself that I could fix, you know? And to where I could be confident in myself and kind of, like, be happy with myself as a person, you know what I mean? So, you know, I hope to help. And again, I don't know you as a person as much. So, like, I can't give you advice that's going to specifically help you better, but I hope, you know, something from my experience can, like, speak to somebody on some level. So, you know, that's all I'll say on that, because I don't really know what else I can say on it. I don't really like this slide menu. It's not my favorite thing in the world. Kind of liked when they were divided up into groups a little bit more. But it is what it is. Boop, boop. Little button nose. Onto Fox. Onto Foxers. Let's go with something slightly more pink. Boxer Fox. What does the fox represent? An anthropomorphic fox. So, no, yeah, these add-ons were split in two. The first three are just winter-themed anthros, and the last three are based on the Christmas Carol ghosts. Because I like that movie, or I like that story a lot. So. I may also have done this because that movie Arctic Foxes happened and I was not thrilled. And so maybe this is my brain trying to associate an anthropomorphic Arctic fox with something that isn't that movie. So, you know. Ghost of Christmas, good boys. I approve of that. Ghost of Christmas, good boys. The Cats movie is. I am so excited to see the Cats movie because I want to see it with friends because it is so cursed looking. And it seems like the movie that is best viewed with friends you can scream at it with. And I'm so excited because I'm gonna do that soon, I hope. Because it looks so horrifying and I'm so ready for it. It just looks like the perfect balance between oh my god it's awful and oh my god it's awful, and I'm excited. Listen, sometimes listen, I'm here for it, okay? Listen, sometimes you just gotta go see an awful fucking movie because that's fun. So, okay, here's the thing though, the Cats movie is based on the play, and here's what blows my mind about the Cats movie, okay? The Cats musical has been a Broadway musical for a very long time, and what is it most famous for? Why, the elaborate, beautiful costumes people have to put on for the show, the elaborate makeup and costumes and things to make themselves really look like these big, bold characters, and also make them look like cats, because the Cats story is about literal cats. They're not about anthropomorphic cats, they are about cats. That's the point. So, the musical was always very well known for being like, when you do it, you're going to have these like crazy costumes, these bold characters, all this kind of thing. So you would think that when Hollywood would get their hands on it, the idea would be that, okay, we're either going to make this animated so that we can have them be actual cats like the story is intended to be, or we would put some Hollywood magic into it and make them put them in some elaborate Hollywood-esque costumes and things like that. And they went with neither. They went with both, and in the worst way possible. And it's like, it blows my mind. And then I found out that there was like a studio that was actually planning on doing an animated, like a 2D animated Cats movie, but the studio got closed before they could ever do it, and that makes me so salty. But I just can't believe that somebody in the studio sat down and thought, yeah, this looks good. I think people will really like this. So I'm just here for the very cursed ride, okay? And it's just, as Anthem No Touch Sex, the movie. Oh, it'll be so cursed. I'm gonna be so cursed, and I'm okay with it. I'm consenting to this curse that I'm about to have on myself and my friends, because I'm only going to see it with friends, because that's the only way you can view such a horrifying thing. And I'm just ready for it, okay? I'm here. I accepted death a very long time ago, so... So I'm okay. It's all good. I'm ready to go hang out with my boy Death as he attempts to kill me, he, she, whatever Death may identify as. I'm so ready. It's gonna be a time. It's gonna be a time, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes you just have to laugh in the world's face and say, yeah, I know this is meant to be horrible, but I'm here for it. Throw it at me. Give it to me. Give it to me. Give me the curse. Anyway. Play it at Christmas to teach children a lesson on how not to make anthems. Oh, goodness. Goodness gracious. I'm so ready. I'm so excited. I'm going to see friends, and we're going to enjoy the experience.